Good. So we're continuing now in the Torah reading of this week, Parshat Shoftim. And in Parshat Shoftim, we have, here they are, you can count them, 11 positive commandments. Where is this? 11 positive commandments and 27 prohibitions. And yesterday we started to count them. So we said, first of all, there's a commandment to pick judges. You have to appoint judges. And the judges are there in order to decide all litigations, all arguments, all uncertainties that people have. There was a big court in the Sanhedrin, in the Sanhedrin court in the Holy Temple. There were 71 people, and then in two different places in the Holy Temple, there was a court of 23, and then in every single town there was 23, unless it wasn't a big enough town, there was 120 people there. Then they would make a court of three people. Excuse the yawn. That we learned yesterday. That was only one of the, what did we say, how many commandments were there? 38 commandments in this Torah portion. Next week's going to be a lot also. 38. Here we have another commandment, and that is don't plant a tree or an idolatry tree, and any sort of a tree in the Holy Temple grounds. Negative commandment. Don't sacrifice an animal that has a blemish in it, even if it's temporary. Here is another commandment, very, very important commandment, positive commandment. You must do what the court says. Like it says, Al Pia Davar Asher Yigid. Here we have the idea of the rabbis interpreting the Torah. Here's the Torah, right? A lot of people say, hey, it says you're not supposed to add on to the words of the Torah. How do we get the rabbis that add on all the words in the Torah? How that? So besides the fact that it's a pretty stupid question, the fact is, what do you think the rabbis didn't read the Torah? I mean, they thought the rabbis were doing a big sin and they thought they'd get away with it, that nobody would understand it. So it's a ridiculous question. The question should be asked is, hey, it says you're not supposed to add. So how did the rabbis add? Can you explain how it is? Not, I see the rabbis didn't know this law. So obviously they did know the law. So the answer is because there's a commandment that the rabbis have to make laws. The rabbis have to do, and you must obey the rabbis. Of course, now you have the question is, who is a rabbi? That's the big question, right? There's the question, who is a Jew? The question is who is a rabbi? A Jew is a person that either his mother was Jewish or he converts properly. So anybody can convert anybody. Maybe you can just do it yourself. Convert yourself. Why go all the way to the court? Convert yourself. What's the problem? So of course the answer is that's ridiculous, because you have to be converted by a judicial court of 3 males, according to the Torah definition of what a male is, not the psychological different definition of today, what a male is. Okay. Now, so we have, you must do what the court says. That's a positive commandment. And there's a negative commandment, not to disregard what the rabbis say. Not to disregard what the rabbis say, etc. This is where we get the whole idea. This is where we get the whole idea of the oral Torah. And anyone who goes against this, what about one of the rabbis? So we said that's the idea of the Zaken Mamre. Zaken Mamre is one of the rabbis that goes against all the others. Because you're supposed to go according to the majority. And the strict criterion of who a rabbi can be. Basic is he has to keep all the commandments. He can't be a rabbi that doesn't keep Shabbos. But in addition to that, he has to have fear of God and etc. Okay. You have to count, you have to appoint a king. Like it says, Som Tasim Alecha Melech. Commandment. You have to pick a king, negative commandment. You cannot pick a king that is not, that his parents weren't Jewish. His parents were Jewish. It says, even if he converts, even if he's a big genius, even if everybody needs him, can't, that's the law. What can you do? Like, you're not supposed to put tefillin on your right arm, on the hand you write with. You have to write, person is left-handed, writes with his left hand, so he puts tefillin on the opposite hand. That's the law. Not because God favors one arm over the other. That's what the law is. Okay. Same thing over here. You have to have a king, and the king cannot be a convert, or of course a non-Jew, for sure not. You have 3 commandments. The king should not increase horses. We got 3 commandments here. Shouldn't come in horses. Shouldn't have too much money. The king's not supposed to only what he needs to. I skipped one. He cannot too many horses, too many women. A king cannot have too many wives. Not to equate wives with horses, but the fact of the matter is also you have money. Money is also not to be equated with horses. But these are 3 things that drive kings crazy. Some people are also crazy about horses, but women and money make everybody crazy. But kings have a special thing. In addition to that, not only are they made crazy by these 2 things, but also from horses. Kings have a big thing about horses. So those 3 things, they can't have too many horses, too many wives, more than 18. It says more than 18 wives. And I mean, that's, 18 wives. And 2 is pretty much, 1 is not easy to get along with. The fact of the matter is, but 2 wives is okay. 2, 5, no problem. 16, 17, 18, good. 19, no, can't. 19, no way. King cannot have 19 wives. It'll drive him crazy. Okay, this is very difficult to understand these laws, but you can think, in a way, they're more spiritual than physical. But the fact of the matter is, physically, he cannot have more than 18 wives, and he can't have too much money. What does it mean he can't have money? If they take spoils from war, of course he can, but it means to take taxes, more taxes, raise the taxes more. He wants to have a bigger, they drive around in a bigger car and 10 cars and a rocket ship, whatever. So the king can't overdo it. Positive commandment. The king has to write a Sefer Torah. He has to write a Sefer Torah with him all the time. The Torah has to be with him always. Excuse me. Next commandment. He has to write a Sefer Torah. You're not allowed to live in the land of Egypt. Not allowed to live. It's a commandment. Can't live in it. Afterwards, the rabbis made also other decrees. You're not supposed to live in Spain. There were, according to some opinions, that is finished. Or you can go there in order to. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, for instance, said Jews shouldn't live in Poland. At least there shouldn't be any Chabad houses there. But in order to go and save the other Jews, you can. Let's just do 3 more. These are talking about the tribe of Levi. Levi doesn't get a portion in the land of Israel. Negative commandment. They don't get a portion in the land of Israel. Negative commandment. The Levi does not get any I'm sorry, they don't get a part in the land of Israel. Also, when there's a war, the tribe of Levi does not get any parts of the spoils of the war. Positive commandment. Anyone who sacrifices an animal, not sacrifices, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, anyone who sacrifices an animal in the holy temple, you have to give to the Kohen 3 parts of the animal. A foreleg, the jaw, and the stomach. That's a lot. That's one of the 24 portions that the Kohanim received. This was in Parshas Korach, if you remember. We had. Okay, you have to give Truma, you have to give Meiser, you have to give these portions, you have to give the Kohen the first shearings of wool from your sheep. Do they do that nowadays? I don't know. Ask people who share sheep. I mean, there are people who raise sheep in Israel. You can ask them. Positive commandment, yes. Positive commandment. In the holidays, you have to give equal portions to the different Kohanim that guard over the temple. It's called the Mishmarot. Okay, here now we have some juicy ones. You're not allowed to do sorcery or witchcraft or whatever it's called, actual magic. That's called liksom, kosamim. And you're not allowed to do kishuf. Kishuf is they take all sorts of you do all these tricks, whatever, in order to tell the future, in order to this. You're not allowed to do chover. What is this? That a person speaks all sorts of whatever his tongues. He brings out a snake and he talks through the snake or through a scorpion, something like that, so that they shouldn't damage. You're not allowed to say lachashim. It says inyan chover shemalachash davarim she'enu lashon im lashon am umalachash anach. He says all sorts of words over a snake or something, whatever it is, in order to charm it, or scorpions and things like that, in order to charm them, so they should not. Most of these are also forbidden. That's what some people say. They're also forbidden for the for non-Jews as well. Excuse me. The 7 Noahide commandments are general ones, but some people say that these are also additional things that non-Jews are not supposed to do. There's another thing called shola ov yidoni, yidoni. It's already written before. They take a bone or something, they put it under their armpit, and they say languages. They call it that speaks very deep languages. The people that go to the what is it called? Necromancy, and it's called necromancy. To go to the dead, enliven the dead speak to them. Okay, this is what I want to learn today. It's a positive commandment that you must obey a true prophet. We already talked about listening to the rabbis. You have to listen to the rabbis. That's one commandment. Here's another commandment. You have to listen to a true prophet. Chumash Yitzvah, whatever he commands you, like it says, Navi Bekir B'cha Elecha Tishmun. God says, I will give you a prophet, and you have to listen to what he says. Even if he says to go against the Torah temporarily, you have to, if it's a true prophet. But if he says there's a certain commandment, you shouldn't. We learned about that before. We talked about the false prophet. But here he's talking about a true prophet. A true prophet you must listen to, even if he tells you to go against one of the Torahs, the commandments of the Torah, unless that commandment is idolatry. And it could also be murder also. I don't know. Rambam only brings down idolatry. If he tells you to worship idolatry just once, you can't do it. In fact, you have to kill him. We'll see. But a prophet that says you have to just temporarily not do one commandment, you'll have to listen to him, But if he tells you one commandment is you never have to do any more, then that's called a Navi Sheker. Even if he says you don't have to light Hanukkah candles anymore, no necessary to light Hanukkah candles anymore, then it says, oh, really? We have a present for you. What? You choke him to death. Choke him to death, there was a certain way to do it, and there's no such thing anymore. So don't do it to somebody who you think is a prophet. Don't choke. There's normally no more death penalty. There has not been a death penalty in Judaism for well over 2,000 years. No death penalty. And Rabbi Akiva said that if he had been alive when there was a death penalty, that no one would have ever gotten killed. He would have asked so many questions because it was very, very difficult to kill somebody. But nevertheless, when it comes to idolatry, they sort of made an exception. They made it very easy to kill people. But nevertheless, you don't do it today. There's no such thing. But God really doesn't like it. So you have to listen to a prophet. If it says, one who does not obey the words of a true prophet, the punishment is death from heaven. And a prophet, what about a prophet that he makes a prophecy and he himself does not obey his own prophecy? Also his punishment is death from heaven. This is everywhere, all time, etc. And the Rebbe pointed this out, that prophecy is not something that stopped. It said that it stopped temporarily in the destruction of the Second Temple. It stopped temporarily. But the fact of the matter is that prophecy still exists. And he says, you can see examples. There's clear, amazing prophecies of the Baal Shem Tov and his pupils. Amazing prophecies that they made. You can see the Rebbe himself. But on the other hand, there's a negative prophecy, and that is, do not prophesize a lie in the name of God. Punishment is also death. Okay, as we can understand, there's a lot of details involved, but we don't have to go into it. Nevertheless, you should just know that there is such a commandment. Negative commandment, do not prophesize in the name of idolatry. In idolatry, all these other religions, in the name of this, I prophesize, it's a sin. Not one more commandment regarding the prophet, false prophet. You should not be afraid to kill the false prophet. I want to stress again, there is no death penalty anymore. We don't do it. You can't take things into your own hands and start killing people. But nevertheless, you're not, a person that has been found guilty by a court of being a false prophet, as if he does it on purpose, etc., and he's found guilty, you must kill him. He must be killed by the people who hear it, the people who will testify against him. They're the ones that are supposed to be the first ones to carry out the judgment. Okay, that's good enough for today as far as the laws go. Let's go into the Chumash and learn a little bit of this law here we have that we just finished learning, right? Where is this? All right, we'll do this. When you come to the land of Israel that God is giving to you, don't learn to do the disgusting things that the non-Jews do. It says don't learn to do, but you can learn. You're not allowed to learn to do it, but you are allowed to learn in order to decide laws. What does that mean? Well, it's forbidden to worship idols and forbidden to do magic and there's other things that are forbidden to do that the non-Jews do. So you're not allowed to learn to do them, but you can learn and try to understand in order to understand how tremendously you see, detestable and decadent they are. And then you can teach your children, don't do this, because this is what the non-Jews do. A nice, beautifully long Ramban over here, but it's very important not to copy the non-Jews. Very important. That's why you have all these groups in Hasidim. They dress in these really weird ways, and it's based on this, it's a very good thing. It's based on this, that they don't want to in any way dress or look that they could be in any way accused of copying or admiring the way that the non-Jews dress. Chabad did not put such a big emphasis on clothes and difference. I mean, even though that they do look different than everybody else, but they don't make an effort to look different. It's just that there's a custom to put you on a hat and to be dressed formally. There shouldn't be any one of you that passes his son or daughter through fire. Duk, samim, ma'onen, menachesh, mechashef. We talked about these various things before. Rashi sort of explains what it is. This is the service of molech. Molech, they used to, I get they get kicks from this. I don't exactly understand how, but they would make two fires, big bonfires, whatever they're called, and they would take their children and pass them between the two fires. And this would, not to burn their children. Some people say yes to burn. Rashi doesn't say that. They would pass the children. That would be to devote them to this idolatry. Kosem ksamim. What is a kosem? He holds some sort of a stick, and he says, "Should I go or shouldn't I go?" And he says, as a pasuk, it says that he holds onto his staff and he takes advice. Now, the Rambam says something interesting, that all these people who do this, necromancy and this weird sorcery and things like this, and astrology and stuff, that it works. These things, they work. They work. Why not do it? Because they come from the side of tuma, of impurity. And that's the difference between a Jewish prophet and a non-Jewish prophet. A Jewish prophet is always right. If he's a genuine prophet, he's always right. Unless he says a negative thing. If he says something negative, it could be that the Jewish people will to repent. But if he says something positive, we'll learn that in a minute. But all these things, they're right, 50% of the time, 80% of the time, 90% of them, not all the time. That's another sign. Even if they were right 100% of the time, it still is forbidden to listen to. Okay, what is a kosem? That's what he says. What's a ma'onin? Rabbi Akiva said, these are people that say, this is a good time to begin, like astrology and things like that. The rabbis say that this is a person that's ochez einayim. Ma'onin, he tricks everyone. That's why they say that nowadays, if you bring a magician for kids, to impress the kids, then you should, you have to tell them. You have to tell the crowd. Okay, menachesh. People that say, "Oh, here's a sign: bread fall from your mouth." It means, step on a crack, you break your mother's back. All these things. A black cat costs your way. You're not allowed to do those things. Forbidden. Chover shal ov yidoni doresh samesim. All these things, he says. Chover. He gets all sorts of snakes and puts them together, and he. From that, he gets some sort of power to tell the future. He asks an ov. What's an ov? He puts some sort of a bone in his armpit, and voices come out from the dead or whatever. Okay, Yidoni. Oh, this, I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, this one, he just speaks from his armpit, the dead people. The Yidoni, he takes a bone from an animal, which is called the Yedua, and he puts it in his mouth, and then all sorts of words come out. And I mean, I don't want to give anybody any ideas over here. Don't do these things. Dorish is amazing. They do these. I know people that they went especially into Mexico, and they take peyote and stuff like that. And there's people that really do these sorcery things, Haiti, and there's other places. These things that they work. Here it says that they work. Dorish is the mating. He does all sorts of things in order to bring up the dead, and the dead give him ideas to speak to them. These things are all disgusting, and because of this, God kicked the non-Jews out before you. Famous sentence, Tomim tiyem Hashem Elokecha. Be wholesome with God. Says Rashi, Hitalech imo b'tamimus. Go with God in simplicity, lo, and you should wait for God. V'lo kach korach re'atidot, and don't do too much future telling. Where I put on tefillin, there used to be this lady that they already went away. She would look at a crystal ball. I saw that people would go to her and they want to know what's going to be future. There was another guy, tarot cards. You ever see those tarot cards? I used to I delved into that once a little bit. Tarot cards. You have these cards and they tell what the future is. This is what the future is. Basically, it's the same thing. Look in the newspaper and there's your astrology for today. If you are Aries, then this is a bad day to, buy a Ferrari. If you are from Leo, then that's forbidden to do. You're not allowed to do that. Everything that comes upon you, you should accept with simplicity. In other words, do what you can in order to assure the future. You can go to tzaddikim. There are tzaddikim that can tell you what to do and can tell you what they think is the best thing to do. The Rebbe used to tell a lot of people, very, very common, would tell people what they should do, what they shouldn't do. It was more common that people didn't listen to the Rebbe and usually didn't come out good. But that says, that's what it means, Tomim tiyeh. If you are simple, then im Hashem yochel, you will be with God, and also the people of God, Am Hashem Elokecha. You will be with God and you will be his portion. Tamim, if you look in the Torah, the word Tamim is written with a big tuf. If you go in Tamimus, it's as though you've done the Torah from beginning, Aleph ad Tov. Go with simplicity with God. Don't be too clever. Let's just do the Orach Chaim. There's a lot what to do over here, but let's look at the Orach Chaim. Now you're going to see in 1 minute that God is going to say, but for 1 second, I'm not telling you to not worry about the future. You should take steps if you can. In fact, that was the whole thing of the Urim and the Tumim in the Holy Temple. What was the Urim and the Tumim in the Holy Temple? People would go and ask what to do. If you read the letters of the Rebbe, there's Igros Kodesh. You see that there's answers, the Rebbe answers big rabbis, and he tells them, and they ask him for advice, and he tells them sometimes, things that they should do, that they shouldn't do, that, I a lot of times agree with what the rabbi says, maybe this, and the Rebbe says something totally different. So that's the idea of a true prophet. We'll see in this week's Come Learn with Us in the morning. Tell your friends in the morning. We have a class 9 to 9:30, and we're going to learn the Rebbe. Here in this week's Torah portion, the Rebbe says that he's a prophet. You'll see that God has made a prophet. Okay, Pirush, because God is going to command us, he just commanded us not to listen to the Onen and the Mechashef and Ov, Yidoni, and all these things. So therefore, he says you have to be wholesome with God. What does it mean? Kolomar. Tam kol davrim elu. The reason that you want to know future, v'litnaeg al asher yaru, v'lataken achisaron, and to fix up things which are lacking as much as you can. right? We're here in the world to fix up the world. So if we can know, which road to take and where to put our energy, who's telling the truth, who's not telling the truth. Imti Hashem Elokecha, Imti Im Hashem Tamim. If you will be wholesome with God, then don't worry about it. You won't lack anything. Then even if the stars are against you, and an astrologer will say, don't do such a thing on such a day, and he could be right. It could be that the stars are against you. But nevertheless, if you're wholesome with God, then God will change the whole thing. This is the proof. Abraham. In the beginning, it says, God said, God took him outside. It says, God took Abraham outside and he said, look up at the stars. It says, God showed him his mazel. According to his astrology, Shalo Yalid, it was impossible for Abraham to give birth to children. No matter how you interpreted the stars, Abraham was barren, he and his wife. V'nitapech, all of a sudden everything changed. V'yolid, and he had a child. That's where the Jewish people come from. So the Jewish people come from a person that did not listen to the stars. Right? If Abraham would have looked, he could have said, okay, maybe I'll get divorced. It says that Sarah didn't have a womb. It says it was a Sarah Akara Ein Lo Vlad. It's Ein Lo Beit Vlad. That she couldn't. So Abraham could have said, hey, look at the stars say I won't have any children. My wife is barren. I mean, put one and one together. It's pretty simple. The reason I'm not going to have any children is because of my wife. She's a holy lady and everything like that. But, she's not going to have children whether I'm married to her or not married to her. So it makes sense to marry somebody else, right? Says, yes, maybe that makes sense, but it's not Judaism. Judaism doesn't go according to sense. It doesn't go according to the stars. Judaism goes according to what God says. It says, even if all the stars are against you, but listen, take a listen from Abraham. We Jewish people stem from a man who did not listen to the stars. Well, according to this, that's what it says, Tamim Tihiyeh, you will be. This is from above to below. What does it mean? Tamim Tihiyeh, you will be wholesome. So it is not if you will be wholesome, then you will be with God. You will be wholesome. You will be complete. Everything you need, you'll get. Tamim Tiyeh, you will be complete. Im Tiyeh Hashem, if you will be with God. In other words, take this word Tiyeh and put it both ways. Tamim Tiyeh, you will be whole. Tiyeh Hashem Elokecha, if you will be with God. Or maybe we can say Tamim Tiyeh, then you will be complete if you are with God. That's pretty nice. Why? Because the Goyim, all the other non-Jews, that you are evicting them from the Holy Land, they listen to these Ma'onanim and Kosmim, magicians, sorcerers, etc. But you won't be so. God said, I already gave you the Urim and the Tumim, right? That the Kohen Gadol uses. And now I'm going to give you something else, a prophet, a true prophet. Navi mikir b'cha me'achecha kamoni, a prophet. Now, Moses is doing all the speaking. A Navi from your brothers, just like me, God will give, and you should listen to him. Rashi says, Kamo sha'ani mikir b'cha, just like I am among you, I'm just a normal Jew like everybody else. Yakum lecha tachtai, someone will be in my place. Kain min navi l'davi, and so it is from every generation, there's always a prophet like this. The Safrona says, you have to listen to him. Im yitzav mitzvah shah. You have to listen to whatever he says, even if it's against the Torah, except for idolatry, if it's temporary. Kachol shal shashata, anything which you ask from God, Kachol, just like you asked in Chorev on Mount Sinai, Bayom HaKahal, when everyone was gathered to receive the Torah. what did you all say? God said, I want to speak to the Jews alone. And then what did the Jews say? Lo osif lishmo et kol Hashem. We can't listen to the voice of God. Ve'et ha'isha gedola, and this big fire. We can't see it. Please, we don't want to die. All the Jewish people. Vayomer Hashem Malai, and God said to me, Heitivo asher diberu. It's very good. Navi akim lahem mikirav achechem. I'll give a prophet, and he'll speak. V'natati devrai b'fiv. I'll put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to them everything I command. So just like the Jewish people on Mount Sinai, they said that they didn't want to hear directly from God. They want to hear from Moses. So he said, so it's going to be in every generation. God said, I'm going to speak to the Jewish people through genuine prophets. Of course, now the person will learn this and say, oh, this is my calling. I am a prophet of the Lord. And he goes out and he just says, whatever I say must be right. Says the Rebbe, says the Torah, I knew what you're going to think. You're going to think, now the Jewish people have to listen to a prophet. So anybody who goes out and spouts off and says, I'm a prophet, so everybody has to listen to him, right? Wrong. A person that does not hear what I have to say. Asher Yedaber, he does speak in my name. I will take it out. He'll have to pay back. It says, it will be killed from heaven. Ve'id ha'isha shelo yishma el divrei hanavi she'omar hakenina ve'sham katuv b'dvar Hashem v'kavar haya hanavi noda. Okay, this is the different. In other words, what's it saying? If a person that doesn't listen to what the prophet says, so his punishment is death. But what if about a prophet that he never received anything from God? He just made the whole thing up. That's what he says. Hanavi, a prophet that speaks prophecy in my name, things that I never commanded him, and he speaks, but what in the name of other gods, he'll also die. So comes along a prophet and says, the Lord spoke to me. Who's the Lord? And he makes up a name from another god. Right? There's all these other religions. I spoke. Says this person is also punishable by death. So a person that prophesies in the name of God, something he didn't hear, or he prophesies in the name of another god or spirit or wherever, even if it's things that he did hear, but he comes and tells everybody, his punishment will be. Okay, if you say, how will I know? At the davar asher lo dibru Hashem, a prophet's going to come. I have to listen to him. How am I going to know who it is? He's going to start to talk. Well, I haven't got the ability to go and check out everybody. This is very simple. If the prophet says something, you can test him. If the prophet says to do something and something is going to happen, you can say, what's going to happen next week? And he says a good thing is going to happen and it doesn't come out. The Lord Yavad Asher Dibro Hashem, Bezadon Dibro Anavi, Ahi Lo Tagur Mimeno. Don't be afraid of killing him. Lo Timana Atzmacha Milamed Alav Chova Lo Tireh Laoneshoto. Don't be afraid to punish him. So God will give a good prophet, and you should listen to him. And that will give you comfort in the future. You can see the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when there was the 6-day war, the Rebbe said, you don't have anything to worry. Don't leave Israel. It's going to be okay. No problems. When Saddam Hussein was shooting the missiles, you should know, nobody agreed with the Rebbe. Absolutely nobody. None of the rabbis, none of the tzaddikim, except for the tzaddikim that said, whatever the Rebbe says, it's true. You have to listen to him. When Saddam Hussein shot missiles, the Rebbe said the war is going to be over. No one should leave Israel. People should travel to Israel. Israel is the safest place in the world, and that's what it came out to be. The Rebbe said the Iron Curtain was going to fall. So, etc. We have a prophet in our generation, the prophecy of the Rebbe, and the main prophecy of the Rebbe is, Hine Mashiach bo. One more second, Mashiach is here. Have a good day with Mashiach now. God willing, we'll meet tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning for Hasidus class, to Likuti Torah. Shalom uvracha. Chodesh Tov, everybody. Hey, Chodesh Tov.